Lucky enough now to be joined by Trey Wingo, who is working for Caesars Sportsbook. He is the Chief Trends Officer, a brand ambassador for them, and of course, a football nut. Trey, I know you're joining me from Hawaii, so aloha to you, and thanks for joining me.
Well, mahalo nui loa means heavy, heavy thanks. So good to be with you.
I appreciate the time. NFL draft now in the rearview mirror for 2022. As you assess what we saw, some unusual trends in terms of the defensive players that were taken at the top, which NFL team do you think is most improved after the draft?
Well, yeah, that's always a difficult question because I think when people do these draft grades and everything, we need to put it in the proper context, right? There's two things that can work against you. You can take the wrong player, or you can take the right player and it doesn't work out. And let me give you a couple examples. In 1998, Peyton Manning went first overall and Ryan Leaf went second overall. And Ryan Leaf, by his own admission, says, I'm one of the biggest busts in the history of the draft. That's true, but it wasn't a bad pick. The reason I say that is there wasn't a team in that draft that wouldn't have taken Ryan Leaf second overall. In fact, there was great discussion and concern about who was actually better, Ryan Leaf or Peyton Manning. So, Ryan Leaf goes down as this immortal bust in the history of the draft. Every single data point said that Ryan Leaf should go one or two, especially if you needed a quarterback. So you have to understand, they made the right choice. It just didn't work. For example, a bad pick would be 2016 or 17, 2016, I think it was, when the Bucs traded into the second round to take a kicker, Roberto Aguayo, who lasted less than a year. No other kicker was drafted that year. That was a bad pick. Okay. No one was going to fight them for that pick. So I do this as a long way of explaining. I hate when people say, oh, it's just because the player didn't work out that it was a bad pick. If you could pick the right players, we wouldn't have a 50% fail rate in the first round. So it's about using the value of the pick. So with that long explanation out of the way, again, I apologize. I think that one of the teams that you have to look at is the Jets because they had 3 first-round picks. I think they nailed every one of them on who they should have taken. And then early in the second round, they essentially get a fourth player with a first-round grade in Breece Hall, the running back out of Iowa State, who set the NCAA record for most consecutive games, scoring at least 1 touchdown. I think the Jets did a great job. But are the Jets the most improved team this year? Well, I don't know because it depends on the quarterback. Their quarterback's got to get a lot better. But I thought the Jets did a really great job in the draft. I thought the Ravens did a remarkable job in the draft. The Chiefs, I think, answered a bunch of needs as well. And the Eagles are the wild card for me because you have to include the A.J. Brown trade, which I think is going to help Jalen Hurts a bunch because you have A.J. Brown on one side, Devontae Smith on the other. This kid they took out of Georgia, Jordan Davis, is just a freak. I mean, he's taller than Gronk. He's faster than Patrick Mahomes. He had a higher vertical jump than Jarvis Landry and a longer broad jump at 6'6", 340 pounds than Jimmy Graham had at the combine. His athletic skills are off the charts, but he wasn't really productive at Georgia with all those great defensive players around him. They also took Nakobe Dean, the linebacker out of Georgia, who fell because of some medical concerns, and I think he's going to be just fine. But the Jordan Davis pick to me is the one. If they hit with him, the Eagles had a monster draft.
So a lot to unpack there with what you just said, but I'm curious if you think that Kansas City could be an example of what you were just mentioning in terms of making individual picks that don't work out and then maybe choosing wrong at the position. There's a little bit of nuance there when it comes to which teams are most improved or who did well and didn't do well in the draft. I mean, are you surprised that Kansas City didn't do more to go after one of those wide receivers that were available when they, essentially could have beefed up that area?
Yeah, well, listen, I do love the pick of Sky Moore. I really like what he's going to bring to that group. Now, you could make the argument, absolutely, that they could have. They had 2 first-round picks, one of several. I think we had 9 teams with at least 2 picks in the first round, which had never happened before. You could make the argument, okay, maybe they should have gone and gotten Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson or Treylon Burks, whom the Titans are replacing A.J. Brown with. But I am of the belief that I think that people aren't appreciating what they've already done. Mecole Hardman was drafted in 2019 essentially because they thought they were going to lose Tyreek Hill then when that audio tape came out of him saying not so nice things to his girlfriend and all those allegations around him. They drafted Mecole to sort of maybe potentially replace Tyreek. Now, I want to be clear. Tyreek Hill is not replaceable. He's the Steph Curry of the NFL. He has unlimited range. He can hit from anywhere. But if you give me Mecole Hardman now in a featured role alongside Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who I think is very underrated in his value as a player. He's big and he's fast. And then you bring in Sky Moore, and they also still have Josh Gordon. Now, it's been a while since Gordon has been a really productive player, but I think with a full offseason in the system and the way they're going to try and spread the ball around, I think Josh Gordon and Marquez Valdez-Scantling might surprise people. So no, I was okay with them not going for a wide receiver earlier. They had to get edge presence, and getting George Karlaftis was amazing. And to have McDuffie there sitting at a corner, I thought the Chiefs did really, really well in the draft.
A lot of people around here, because you mentioned what the Jets did, are excited about what Robert Saleh, potentially has to work with. He tamped down expectations just a little bit, or tried to, and mentioned when he was in this, of course, especially with this fan base. When I was in Seattle, back in 2012, we got a D+. We ended up getting Russell Wilson. These guys need a couple years to develop. How long do you think it takes for, and this is kind of 30,000 foot view, maybe making an unfair kind of sweeping generalization, but in today's NFL, with some of the programs you have, like Alabama and these powerhouses, how long does it typically take rookies to develop in this league?
Well, I think that there are certain positions that translate much better. Like, for example, the reason you're seeing all these wide receivers go is the NFL and the college game have now sort of become very similar. You're going to continue to see wide receivers do really, really well really early. I mean, just look at the last 2 years. Justin Jefferson comes out of LSU, sets all kinds of records with Minnesota. Jamar Chase comes out of LSU the very next year in the draft, sets all kinds of records. It used to be the Grand Canyon was the difference between the NFL offense and the way they had to play and the way things played in college. But with the game now being the NFL game specifically, being refereed and adjudicated in a very different way than it was, say, even 10 years ago, I think you're going to see wide receivers transition very well, very early. I think you're going to see cornerbacks are always going to struggle because I don't even know what the words, outside of Jalen Ramsey, I'm not sure the words lockdown corner mean anything anymore. I'd rather have, when people say, well, would you rather have a cornerback, a solid cornerback, or an edge rusher? I'm like, well, give me the edge rusher, because the edge rusher can disrupt the entire play and take out everybody, where a cornerback can only take out one receiver that he's covering. So I think you're going to see edge rushers transition very well. But overall, if you're asking me for a draft like process, I say 3 years is when you really know. And look at the 2019 draft. 11 of the 32 first round picks did not get their fifth year option picked up. Guys like Daniel Jones, who's on a really interesting career path right now. This is a make or break year for him. All three of the Raiders first round picks, they had three in that bounty from the Amari Cooper trade and the Khalil Mack trade in 2019. Not a single one of them got their fifth year option picked up. That should tell you something about how poor that draft went for them.
Yeah, and it's interesting now when you look at the league, you look at what the Rams did, for example, essentially pushing all their chips in and trading away a ton of picks and then winning a Super Bowl. And I almost wonder if teams are going to follow that trend in the NFL, where they go to free agency and they look for these guys that can make an immediate impact. And are you seeing any kind of shift in terms of the ideology behind the draft and really picking players? And the thinking, a couple decades ago was, you invest in these players, you develop these players, and things are just changing on a season by season basis, it seems.
Yeah, it is. And look, it will try and be duplicated, but you better have the Rams scouting department. You better have the Rams player personnel evaluators. You better have Les Snead, the general manager. You can do it that way, but you better hit. Like, for example, Cooper Kupp wasn't a first-round pick. Like, if you're going to trade away these first-round picks, and the Rams are in an historic run where they're going to go, as we speak, 7 years without taking a first-round pick. The only other longer tenure was, I think, 9 in the George Allen over the Hill Gang era with the then Washington Redskins. You better make sure you get the right free agents, and you better make sure that the rest of your draft is solid. And I think the Rams have done a really nice job of drafting really good players outside of the first round and picking up the right free agents. Now, they missed on Brandon Cooks. They traded a first for Brandon Cooks, but they moved on from him. They used 2 first-round picks to get Jared Goff, and then used 2 more first-round picks to get rid of Jared Goff and bring in Matthew Stafford. Look, when you bring in a Jalen Ramsey, right? When you bring in a Von Miller, even though that wasn't a first-round pick, when you get these veteran guys, you better make sure you got the right guys. And they absolutely got it right with Stafford. They absolutely got it right with Ramsey. And their rental of Von Miller this past year was amazing. So, yeah, I think some people will try it, but I don't know if anyone's going to be as successful as the Rams have been.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate risk reward. You mentioned Daniel Jones, and I love the duality that seemingly exists between the personality of this offensive tackle, Evan Neal, that the Giants got, who is just, I was just blown away by kind of his temperament. He seems like such a high character guy. He's a no nonsense sort of guy. I really smiled when I kind of watched him interact with his family at the draft. And then you've got this kind of flashy potential New York personality in Kayvon Thibodeau, and both of them are freak athletes. But you talk about an edge rusher. I mean, in theory, they nailed it. I wonder if you see it that way. I mean, it seems like we are in an era of the NFL where it's a quicker turnaround league, where if you get a couple of guys, you look at Cincinnati, whatever, you can hit. Do you think that they did enough, or they could potentially where they are with those two guys?
Yeah, listen, the Giants have had the worst record in the NFL since the infamous boat photo was taken after the end of the season in Miami, and they lost that playoff game in Washington, I think it was. They have the worst record in the NFL. Under Joe Judge, they were last in almost every offensive category that matters. So, yes, I think that they did. I think they picked the right players in Evan Neal and Kevin Thibodeau. The question now is, do they perform? And much like anything else we talked about with Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones has to get better. He has the second most turnovers in the league since 2018, and he only came in the league in 2019. So I mean, like he's turned the ball over a lot, and it's not just the interceptions, it's the fumbles. This is the year that Daniel Jones will go down as, oh, guy, we figured it out, we've got our quarterback, or well, screwed that up with that pick, and we got to move on. So again, because of the way the game is played, the quarterback is such an important position, and the NFL, if we're just being honest about it, has made the game easier for quarterbacks. You can't hit them high, you can't hit them low. You hit them at all, you're probably going to get a flag. And the way that defenses are played, they don't have to worry about a bunch of other things. They've made the NFL has made quarterbacking easier than it's ever been. And Daniel Jones needs to understand that and be better at quarterbacking. The Giants picks are great. I loved them both. I loved a lot of their draft. But if Daniel Jones doesn't get better, we're in that situation where there are two kinds of players that play quarterback. You either have a dude or you have just a guy. And right now, Daniel Jones' meter is leaning towards a jag, just a guy. They got to find a dude. They got to turn him into a dude.
I like that. All right, just a couple more for you, because I don't want to take you away from the Hawaii sunshine too much longer.
But, it's raining right now, so it's fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, if the sun peaks out, let me know. We'll just.
I'm out. I'm just gone. Exactly. Y'all just leave.
Grab your surfboard. You're out. Thanks for the time. See you later. Don't need to say goodbye. You can Irish goodbye. Because we're talking quarterbacks, I just want to focus in on the Cowboys for just a second, because Dak Prescott had a pretty decent season, but he didn't have a spectacular season, and it seems like they have added a key piece that leads to the offensive line in Tyler Smith. What do you think of him? Is he NFL ready? Is he going to be a player that's going to be able to contribute?
Yeah, he had some issues where he had to have his legs broken and braced because of some plate issues in his knees. I think he's a good player, but my bigger concern for the Cowboys and Dak is, you look at the numbers that the Cowboys put up when Dak and Amari Cooper were on the field together, and they were incredible. And then, of course, because Amari was due $20 million, they had to give him away. And I think the Browns got a sixth-round pick for him, for a guy who's still going to be very productive. He's had, I think 5 or 4,000-yard receiving seasons, and he and Dak clicked. The problem with the Cowboys is that Ezekiel Elliott contract is killing them. It is absolutely killing them. And I just, when they made the contract, when they signed him to that deal, he'd already been suspended once. They'd already begun to sort of rotate those backs between him and Tony Pollard. The money that they gave Ezekiel Elliott is the reason Amari Cooper is not a Dallas Cowboy anymore. And I don't know how tagging Dalton Schultz with the franchise tag and giving Michael Gallup a new contract coming off that torn ACL in January is a better building technique for winning football than keeping Amari Cooper. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So listen, they have CeeDee Lamb, they have a couple other receivers, but the reason Amari Cooper isn't in Dallas is because of the ridiculous contract that they gave Ezekiel Elliott, and I think that's going to have major repercussions for the Cowboys. Defensively,
they were more improved last season than the season before, when they were pretty awful. I mean, is that a trend that you see continuing up?
Well, listen, in 2020, they gave up the most points in franchise history, so they can only go up from there. And they did play a lot better. They lost Randy Gregory, and he finally sort of found his rhythm with all the stuff that he's had to deal with the last few years, ever since they picked him, I think in the second round a few years ago, with a ton of marijuana issues. But marijuana doesn't pop anymore. You have to be Willie Nelson length to have any issues with a marijuana test in the NFL right now. So that's not a concern. They got to find more pass rush, and I think the defense played better. And obviously, Trayvon played great for them, and he's a playmaker. But I listen. The Cowboys are always interesting because they managed to be their own worst enemy. Like the end of that playoff game against the Niners, I still don't understand that call. Let's run a draw and hopefully we can get down there and spike it up one more time. That was never going to work. So with that and the Ezekiel contract, and here's the other thing: the NFC East, nobody repeats. I mean, since the Eagles repeated, I think for 4 years in a row, from '99 to 2002 or maybe 2003, we haven't had a repeat winner in the NFC East. So by default, the Cowboys are not winning the division this year. I mean, maybe they'll get it as a wild card, but history says they're out. So it's one of the other 3 teams that's probably going to take away the NFC East.
That's some interesting context for Caesars bettors that are always looking for those little extra nuggets that will help them when they make their preseason bets and even when they bet during the season. Just staying with the quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, this is just a tough situation to watch. What is the latest? Deebo Samuel, I'm assuming, will be with the 49ers. But as far as Jimmy Garoppolo is concerned, I mean, what does his future even hold now?
Well, it's interesting because I think that they thought, and they being the Niners, thought there was going to be a more robust trade market for him. Well, if you have shoulder surgery on your throwing shoulder, newsflash, people are going to be like, yeah, let's see before we make that deal. And when John Lynch was basically saying, I can envision a scenario where he's with us this year. Well, you have to, because you haven't gotten anything near what you wanted, and we don't know if Trey Lance is ready yet. I mean, I think that they had high hopes for him. You traded up to 3 to get him. But he wasn't great. I mean, he's fine. He was a guy. He was just a guy his rookie year. And they need him to have a macro jump going forward. Otherwise, they're stuck in sort of quarterback hell. I mean, Jimmy's good. He's not great. He's good, but he's taken them to, a couple of deep playoff runs, NFC Championship game last year, Super Bowl against the Chiefs. But he's also, you could argue, the reason why they didn't win either one of those games because of Jimmy Garoppolo's play. So I think that Deebo is going to be there because Deebo, I mean, the Niners, the best way to describe the Deebo situation is that what Deebo does with the Niners makes him so valuable, but it also makes him less valuable to anybody who wants him to be just a wide receiver. And he's saying, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm like, yeah, no one's going to pay you because they don't think you can be a Tyreek Hill or one of these top wide receivers or a Devontae Adams. They like the way the Niners use you. So if they're trading for you, they want to use you like that. And I think Deebo needs to understand that that's sort of his NFL career, is that this wide back scenario that he's created for himself. So I think Deebo's going to be there. And the question of quarterback is a significant one for San Francisco.
That's the best way I've heard that situation described so far. And then just lastly for you, Trey, with what's going on with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, the amount of drama that seems to follow him around, follow the team around. Again, this is me saying it, not you. It's insane. And for him to say publicly that he was surprised that Devontae Adams was going to leave. I mean, it seems like the way that the chips have fallen here for the Packers, that mistakes have been made, as the kids say. What is your assessment of how good they're going to be and all the tumultuous developments that happened in the offseason? It just seems like drama seems to follow this team and maybe even Aaron Rodgers wherever he goes.
He's a little bit of a diva. Let's just be honest about it. I mean, he has diva type qualities. The Packers, though, are sort of betting on the same thing as the Chiefs, which is we believe our quarterback will make our receivers better. Once the Aaron Rodgers deal got done, by the way, he was never retiring. He just wanted more money. So he got more money. And one of the casualties there is that Devontae Adams was a little insulted and he wanted to go somewhere else. So they traded him. But the Packers are betting that their quarterback makes their receivers better, much in the same way the Chiefs are betting that, Patrick Mahomes will make Josh Gordon good again, Marquez Valdes-Scantling better, and Juju Smith back to what he was early in his career with Pittsburgh. The bigger issue for me with Green Bay is, people always say, oh, they've never drafted a wide receiver in the first round under Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, but have you seen the receivers they've gotten in the second round? Devontae Adams was a second round wide receiver. Greg Jennings was a second round wide receiver. Jordy Nelson was a second round wide receiver. So they've had great success in finding good receivers in the second round. But, outside of Alan Lazard and the kid that they drafted this year, can you name any other Green Bay wide receivers? I mean, they all left. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a Packer. Equanimeous St. Brown is a Bear, and Devontae Adams is now a Raider. So it's going to be a challenge for Green Bay because they got to get a lot of new receivers up to speed very quickly with Aaron Rodgers in what we all believe is, a 3-year perhaps window for him to keep playing, although Tom Brady retired for 40 days because he clearly hated his kids. I'm kidding. It's just, I think he thought it was way more difficult than it was to be a full-time parent. So
no, because he's a control freak, and the narrative goes for him, and he had to do it himself. And it was despite that so many people joked about. You just made me think of one more thing before I let you go. How much difference is there really between the first and second round? And does it kind of just depend on how it's stacked? I mean, you've seen these drafts where it's very quarterback heavy at the beginning of the draft. You've seen these defensive stars load up at the front of the draft. I wonder if it really matters anymore whether or not you're a first or second round pick. Does it?
Well, listen, if you're a quarterback, you're always going to be overdrafted. And that's why the fall of Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, I thought was a little interesting in this round or this draft as far as they went. But, you're going to have this was the worst year ever to need a quarterback. Like the Panthers were in the worst situation. The worst time to need a quarterback, to find a quarterback is when you need one. And they are in all kinds of quarterback hell. And there wasn't a quarterback worth taking at 6, and they couldn't trade back for anybody that they wanted. That's why we only had one quarterback go in this year's draft in the first round. But you're going to have 6, maybe 7 in next year's first round. Like it's going to be a very, very, very heavy quarterback draft. And the numbers for the ratings, by the way, will be much higher next year than they will last year. When you have the first 5 players be defensive players, it's like the 2013 draft, which will always be known as the offensive tackle draft. It was Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel, Blake Bortles, and then Lane Johnson. It's like, okay, let me know what's going on. Quarterbacks move the needle. And so next year's quarterback class is going to be ridiculous, and the ratings will be great. Listen, the thing about first rounders is a lot of times first round picks are CYA picks. Cover your ass. Okay, what's his 40 time? Is it good? Does he have good hands? Good hand size? Is that good? What's his 10-yard split? What did he bench? So if it fails, the scouts can say to the owner or the coach, well, look, he had all these things. Check, 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 check. He should be able to be good. In the second round and beyond, they stop looking at covering your ass and they start looking at tape and like, holy shit, this guy can play. So a lot of times you'll see better players in the second, third, and fourth round because they're not concerned about all that other garbage. They're just trying to find good football players. And how do you find good football players? You watch football tape.
I love what you just said about quarterbacks. It's like finding a job. It's always good to go for one when you already have one.
Correct. 100% true. 100% true.
I have never heard that before, but it makes complete sense. Trey, thanks for being with me. I appreciate it. I know you're working with Caesars. You got a bunch of different things going. You got a podcast. If people want to find you, what's the best place for that?
Move to Maui. No, listen, the podcast is everywhere. It's called Half Forgotten History. You can go to my YouTube page, Trey Wingo Presents. I also work for Pro Football Network. I write for Facebook on treywingo.bulletin.com. And obviously I do a bunch of stuff for Caesars in and out the football season. We're doing some fun stuff next week with a schedule release show. And my good friend Jimmy Carr, who has helped setting up this thing. We got some great content planned already going forward. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Great. I'm excited. And Jimmy, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for kicking you out of this by accident.
Jimmy Carr, baby. Jimmy Carr.
Jimmy Carr, I just met you and I've already offended you. I apologize, but Trey was excellent. Don't at me. Don't call me. I don't know how to work technology. Trey, thanks for being with me.
No worries. Take care.